All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Independent Creatives Podcast. My name is Wes. I'm a comic book artist and illustrator and writer. And today I have my new friend with me, Vidhvat. Can you give us a brief introduction? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, man. Hi, guys. My name is Vidhvat. I'm a game developer. I previously worked on the Lovely Planet series of video games. And right now I'm working on my next game called Tamashika, which should be out sometime next year. And yeah, it's like this psychedelic first-person shooter with lots of mystical elements to it. Yeah.
Yeah, a mutual friend of ours told me about your game, and I thought it looked super unique, man. For
Thanks.
a first person shooter game, it kind of reminds me of. Did you ever hear about that game on the PlayStation called LSD? I think is what it was called.
Of course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I love this. I love this effect here. We'll play this trailer again real quick because there's like several different effects that you have that you're doing here that I think are really cool. I like the way that the background kind of rolls in, uh,
hmm
almost like it's on some sort of a conveyor belt or something.
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. That was, yeah.
I mean, this is really cool. It looks very unique, man. How did you come
Thanks,
up
man.
with this? Or I guess I should say, like, how did you get into game development? How long have you been doing this? Because obviously you've had years of experience to come up with something like this.
Yeah, I've been working on games for a long time, and especially like first-person shooters, because like most of the games that I have made have been first-person shooters. It's just like a personal passion or obsession of mine. So I
Mhm,
started programming video games when I was like very young. My dad put me in like computers, like programming classes, and I
mhm.
just since I played my Sega Genesis, I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make video games, and that's when I started hacking up like small demos in Quick Basic and like on this old like DOS computer. And it's yeah, the rest is history, I guess. I just kept making games. So this is where I'm at right now. Um, and yeah, it's all of this just comes very naturally to me. I feel like I'm doing the thing that I need to be doing, the thing I love doing. So all of this is just a consequence of me just um, focusing on what I love doing, basically.
Yeah, man. It's you're very lucky to be able to work on something it is that you actually want to work on. You know, most of the time when people get into this sort of thing, they usually don't stick with it as long as someone like you has. Um, to be doing it since you were so young. How many games do you think you've gone through and like actually completed before you felt like you got the hang of it? Before you felt like because you're doing both the programming and you're doing the art, right?
I have done previously, but here I have an artist helping me with the animations. I could not possibly come up with that kind of art myself, so I'm very grateful
Okay.
that yeah, it's not a single person thing anymore, which I have done before. So I've like I said, I've been making games like just the scope of it was very different. Like I was working on smaller games before, and it wasn't
Mhm,
all sunshine and rainbows throughout too. Like I had a lot of motivation going into Lovely Planet, which was the game I made almost 10 years ago now. And after
mhm.
that, I wanted to continue doing that, like continue making stuff that I love. And it was a rocky road. I went through phases where yeah, so those are all the Lovely Planet games basically. And I just kept making them like 1 year or 2 years apart.
Mhm,
And it was a nice learning experience. And I put those games out. They're published. They're on Steam.
mhm,
So I never really stopped. I just took breaks in the middle. I worked in crypto. I worked in like mobile games briefly, just trying to like
mhm,
get a hang of what it's like to, work on bigger projects with a team of people. And I just
mhm.
always keep finding myself coming back and doing my own games because that's just, one of those like it's your calling or whatever. So I enjoy doing this. I feel like I'm a better person when I'm working on my own games. And I think it's like my responsibility at this point to just continue to like be my best self, I guess. So that's where the games come from.
Yeah, your stuff it's super creative, man. I I've always wanted to jump into doing like game development stuff, and it is definitely more approachable now than it's ever been for people to make their own games. What program or what are you using? Unreal? Are you using Unity? What game development software are you using?
For all the Lovely Planet games, I did use Unity. And different
Okay.
versions of Unity because yeah, that thing also there's lots of iterations of Unity. And the current game Tamashika, I'm working on this game development library called Monogame, which is on C Sharp. So it's not a
Mhm.
conventional kind of game engine. And I'm just like I've when I was younger, I would not use engines, so it's like kind of going back to the way I used to make games before, which feels cool.
Mhm.
Like I have more control. Like I have to write everything myself, but it feels right. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've always wanted to get into game development. It seems like there's a pretty huge hurdle to getting through a game. I mean, I imagine your average game probably takes you what, like a year or two to get through.
Yeah, around that
Is
much.
that
Like this game, I've given myself more time with this game because I've this is another reset of mine. I quit my job and I'm like, look, I've got to give this whole video game thing a try. But given the tools, given how you scope your project, like if you're getting into games, you could use the tools and give yourself a deadline that's modest, but not sit down for say like 2 years or something. Like you don't really have to do that. You can just scope down and like make something smaller and easier. And it's good when you know what you're building, because like usually when I get into starting a game, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm chasing after this feeling that I want to reproduce. And then like on the way there, I make like 2 3 different games. I try out different stuff. You prototype, you iterate on some ideas, some work, some don't. It's like a kitchen sink kind of process. If you're doing that, then yeah, probably like give yourself a little bit more time. But I mean, for me, that's the fun part for making games. So I just I
Mhm.
I give myself that extra time to just enjoy myself and chase after that feeling. It's a good feeling.
So does it usually start off with like a game mechanic idea that you saw in another game that you felt like you could do something different with it, and so you build like kind of a little prototype, and then you iterate on it until you find what's fun with it? Is that
Exactly.
kind of
I
what?
mean, I have so much to say about this because I myself have been trying to get to the bottom of, okay, what is the primary kind of like motivation, the driver, that the thing that really gets you up, at 6 in the morning, and like you want to sit in front of your computer for like 12 hours a day. Like where is that coming from? Like I really wanted to investigate that. And yes, there's inspirations. There's like this other game that I played called Post Void, which like literally like changed my life. That's a separate story we can go into later, but I was
Mhm.
obviously inspired by a different game. And it wasn't as much as like oh, I just want to copy this and make my own version of it. There was a drive that was a lot deeper than that. Like, I'm just like, okay, this is great, but here's how I would change it to make it, better for me. Like the one that I
Okay.
want to play. So like that thing, I think is just a feeling. That's the space you go into as an artist, and like it opens that fountain of creative ideas that just like come storming in. That thing, if it
Mhm.
had a name, I'd be like, yeah, that's the that's where I like to be. That's where this comes from.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never really thought about that in terms of game design, but it kind of reminds me of the same sort of approach that I have whenever I'm writing something or whenever I'm making my comic is that there's kind of maybe an atmosphere or a sensibility it is that you're aiming for, and then you're trying to find something that best expresses that sensibility, right?
For sure,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a aesthetic element to it and everything. I'm like, as an artist who's trying to like work on my own process, I'm kind of trying to like dig deeper than that and be like, is that a brain state? Like, is there some like configuration in my head from where I'm more connected to my creativity, right? And that's like an alignment thing. And downstream of that, I feel is like a, okay, I have this aesthetic sense that really resonates with me, and if I know that, then I want to just give it all my attention and see where that takes me. And I feel like as creatives, we do end up doing that a lot, and it's like a faith-based kind of struggle where it's like, can you go after the thing that you love in the most unfiltered, kind of unadulterated way, and just be the truest version of, you know, or go after the truest version of the art that you want to create. And I feel like I've done that
Mhm.
here. I just, this stuff resonates with me, you know, like these gamey
Yeah.
characters in the psychedelic hallway. Like young me wants to play this game, so I'm making
Yeah.
it for him. He's just like, I know one person that exists outside of time which would look at this and be like, bruh, this is it. Like this is the. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna be connected to that guy, and I'll just make that game. And hopefully there are like other people that are like that would resonate with this. And so far from the feedback that I've gotten, it seems like, yeah, people get it. And I'm just like, all right, that's great. Let's make a cool game.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the aesthetic of it. Is so the psychedelic aesthetic is something that has a huge inspiration on you. What is there like a story behind that? Is there like a, I don't know, a DMT trip or something along those lines?
There are many stories. There are way too many stories that we would have to
Mhm.
get into over there. But I feel like the psychedelic aesthetic itself, I've always resonated with it growing up. I've always had a keen interest in altered states of consciousness and mysticism and all of those things. So when I played Postword, I was just like, okay, I would take this, but I would make it more psychedelic. And then, I would just look in the mirror and be like, why? Like, why do you want to make it psychedelic? Like, what is it about the psychedelic aesthetic that you like so much? And then I try to kind of like go into my head and just be like, okay, what are the things that really call out to me? And that all those collection, that collection of things kind of points at this aesthetic. So I've kind of been able to, put references inside here, and like, like you can see the Japanese kind of Inari shrine, torii gates, and everything. That
Mhm.
that's the stuff that calls out to me, and I'm just trying to, take all of the things that I find interesting that I'm putting into the game and find like a narrative thread that goes through them.
Mhm.
And at the tip of that is this aesthetic. So I was just like, yeah, of course I want to make this. Yeah, psychedelics are cool. Altered states of
So,
consciousness is cool.
so even the story is something that you iterate on based off of the prototype it is that you build.
For me, like I don't really put conventional narratives in my games because I don't feel like that's the strong point for the medium.
Mhm.
And even if it is, I just don't find that direction very interesting. For
Mhm.
me, what I'm doing is kind of making the same thing the same thing I did with Lovely Planet, where there's really no story, but there is like this environment that's communicating ideas to you, and that's happening here as well. There are references everywhere. There's there's hidden meanings in the achievements and this and that. All of it is like this, for this game, like a philosophical kind of intuition pump almost, for certain philosophies or whatever. That's what I'm doing here, and I feel like I discovered that while making the game, kind of like seeing the meta narrative of this person making this game, and why is it that I'm putting this aesthetic and all of that. So like the narrative is kind of like happening at this meta level, which
Mhm.
I feel like is an exercise that I'm doing on myself to really like develop some level of clairvoyance, for the vision, that from where this game is coming. So if I can see that better, I can make this better, and that's kind of like this exercise that I'm running on myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've been thinking recently, like, did we create video games in order for us to be able to understand that we live in a simulation? Like I almost feel like like we've kind of we started out with cave drawings, and there's always this metaphor of life that's just kind of followed humanity, like people would used to say like, oh, the brain is like a computer, or it's like,
Mm,
I mean, I think it's more like a radio than a computer,
mm,
right? Like it's picking up
mm,
a signal that's being broadcasted. But there's always, it seems like art has been progressively getting closer and closer to a simulation that is of reality. Like it started out with like maybe cave drawings, and then it becomes novels and plays. And then these things kind of, they start to fall out of fashion as things like film, and then now games, where, I mean, you can basically live an entire another reality within this reality. And it's interesting to think about it that way because I mean, the truth is that a lot of things about life are very much like a game, you know, like no
Mm.
matter how much you play the game eventually gets turned off. You know, it's like you're
Yeah.
playing with sand and then you have to wash it away. And that's what happens with our lives too, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Those analogies are just so solid. They've always been solid. I mean, there's books out there, life is a game and here are the rules and everything. But like, given where we are with the technology and what I think we'll be able to achieve in the future, that analogy will just be like the parallels there will just be too obvious to ignore. And like you said, the brain is just like a computer or a radio, like the conversation that we have going in cognitive science with your brain is actually like this hierarchical neural network, and all the stuff that you can build on top of that system is all it all harkens back to spiritual kind of teachings that have been getting passed on for ages. So it's like we're just talking about the same thing but through different language. And I think, yes, video games are just like they're primed, I feel, to go in that direction of like life is a simulation. And I feel like the lore of this game is trying to do that justice. I would like to also
Mhm.
be able to do that in the mechanics of the game, uh,
Mhm.
but like I'll get there. I'll get there. I have a few games in me. I want to make more games, and I think, yeah, the medium is definitely ready for it. So I'm excited to take it in that direction because I'm passionate about that.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is that games have gotten to the point where pretty much anybody can make one, and
Mm.
they're all like these very personalized simulations of their own perspective on life. Um, and it's such a unique time and it's such a unique medium compared to like film. Like you think you could make a film and you could put it out there, but it doesn't really have the same kind of culture around it the way that games do. And I think a big part of that was probably because of Steam. I mean, Steam has basically become like the Apple store for video
Mm.
games now. You know what I mean? And I think that having that box around it helps create like a culture of people that are contributing to the indie scene.
For sure, for sure. I feel like from film, just the way the medium works, games are just so different because they're performative, like they're interactive, and also they're like this living organism that players kind of swarm into. So the effect of how like a film would come out and people would talk about it, like a game comes out, but then people play it and talk about it, and I feel like
Mhm.
games today are self-aware of this fact and use it to kind of like fuel the whole ecosystem. And just to see that happening is just like this in video games theory, like we have the idea of the ludic and the narrative circle. It's like the story of the game itself and the players playing it is being told while they're playing it.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, we're inside the storytelling machine now. Like film is just the story out there and the
Mhm.
viewer interacting with it. That's great, but like we're now inside the medium through which we can tell the story that is coming through us. And I mean, that's just like, that is next level, literally. The whole argument of like video games are not art and this and that, I'm just like, dude, come on, like let's get on with let's get on with this. I don't want to have that argument. That's just I think that's just taxonomy. Like we can keep arguing there, but like games are unique. They have these strong suits, and if you can just focus on that and just have fun, games,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, let's have some fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I never really understood that argument considering you have like paintings with like a banana taped onto a canvas or something
Mm.
ridiculous like that, but then you can't put something like a video game in that same context. It just seems kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous to me.
yeah, it does. Yeah, it's just I feel like there's some power structures out there that are fighting over some label. I don't know. Like I think cool people are making cool stuff and they should continue doing it, and I want to hang out with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see the videos going around of like the AI mods in like Skyrim, where it's like the guys go
Mm.
and they do just like crazy stuff where they'll set up somebody, they'll set up an AI, and they'll basically go and talk to all the other AIs, and they'll get them to
Wow.
turn against one guy, or you've never seen anything
Hmm.
like that?
I've never seen
And
those. No, I've not seen those yet.
do you, as far as like Chat GPT and stuff like that, is that something that you could like port into a game, like the one it is that you're making? Like, is there a way to bring in this AI thing that we're creating into a game in a way that would be like easy to
Hmm.
easy to do, or
There
no?
are, I think, easy ways of doing it. Like like the mods that you described right now for Skyrim, they're probably like, taking advantage of some kind of like a AI assisted dialogue system, for example, or setting up a world which has a narrative, and you can, let a model just run loose in there. Like, yeah, sure, there are like those ways of doing it. But for me, like for this game, I've kind of constructed this game around the idea of how an AI system could be implemented into it in the future. Not that I'm doing it immediately right now, but I'm very excited to kind of get to that point where, yeah, like my whole idea is like this is my card. You don't play the video game; it plays you.
Please, yeah. Nice.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, that's already happened in so many ways. But like, if a game was learning the player while the player was playing it, and kind of tuning itself to the player's everything, really, like you can everything from reaction time to biometrics and my belief systems or whatever. Like, if it can just get in there, then it could just like architect the experience specially tuned to me. So like that can eventually happen, and I'm interested in exploring that direction. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely seems like we're entering into that phase of game development, right? Because essentially, once that becomes a common thing, then every game is basically just going to be like its own universe in a sense. It's
Mm.
its own world with its own characters and its own
Mm.
physics, and it's almost
Yes.
kind of like this kind of fractal thing that we do where we're creating simulations within simulations, and it
Hmm.
seems to just keep going and going. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think that there's that avenue. There's also unique things that we've kind of seen before, but they'll just be leveled up. Like how you play a game. The game will construct itself around your abilities. So it'll be like this kind of speed running, for example, like we have where players kind of find unique ways to break the game to get to the end faster. Like here, it would be like, oh, because of the way a certain player was able to play the game, the game did this unique thing with them, and that would be like this thing that you have Olympics for or whatever, like where you show off, like, look how, like, it's like playing an instrument but doing it really well. Like, here's this
Mhm.
person who's really good with the guitar, look at their guitar solo. It's like you could do that with a game, and I think that would be spectacular.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's so much creativity out there, and yeah,
Blessed.
it's really cool to be able to see people doing their own thing. Yeah, I've had
That's
I've
what
had
inspires
similar
me.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had similar thoughts when it comes to the comics and stuff that I make. I don't know if you're a Philip K. Dick fan at all,
I've
but he
obviously
was.
heard of those. I've not read them though. I would love to.
You've never read any of his books?
Nope,
No.
nope, nope.
No.
This is what
Yeah.
Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, is it? Or
Yeah.
um,
Do androids dream of
yeah.
electric sheep? Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, he was one of the original science fiction authors to popularize the idea of the simulation theory, and
Right, right, right.
yeah, so it's probably something you would be interested in. So this was a game it is that you made. This was one of the Lovely Planet games, and
Hmm.
was this the first one that you put together, or is
This is the second one. Lovely
this
Planet
is the second?
Arcade. Yeah, I
Okay.
really like this game. I really enjoyed playing it and making it.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very simple. I think it didn't get the kind of attention the first game got, but I understand why that is. I wanted to play a first-person shooter that plays like this. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I think I've kind of brought it back with the new game because it's kind of like, the whole game happens on this plane, like a 2D kind of affair, like you're playing Doom or Wolfenstein. So
Mhm.
I learned a thing or two from this game. So all the projects that you've left behind, as a game developer, just look at them. There was a part of you that really was digging something about it, and that's why you poured all those hours into it. So it becomes like this map, this map of inspirations, hidden inspirations that you're like leaving behind you. It benefits me to kind of like just look at them, not as like failures or, oh my god, I wasted all my time. It's no, I was onto something, right? And I need to know what that is so that I can use that in my next game. This is lovely.
So whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is okay. So this is a remix. So this was like basically you revisiting the same ideas after completing the first two, or?
Yeah, first like 4. So I made Super Lovely Planet. I also made Lovely Planet 2, which was very much like Lovely Planet 1. And I kind of like, went back and looked at why I'm making first-person shooters. And I figured out that I just like, variations on first-person shooters. So I just made one Lovely Planet game with a bunch of different kind of physics and a bunch of different kind of guns and, gameplay mechanics. And I really enjoyed working on this. I did. It was really fun.
Yeah,
good times.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of fun. So for people that wanted to do something like game development, what do you typically suggest to people? Do you suggest that they use things like Unity or Unreal, or do you just tell them just like figure it out, code your own engine or something? I imagine it's probably no. Yeah.
I mean, I would, it's because there's a lot of different, ways of doing this, and you have to kind of find the one that works for you. If an engine is, your go-to, just if you're starting out, it's probably a great idea to just jump in an engine and kind of like learn the ropes very quickly and make something on top of that framework. If you want to get into the weeds of it, I think if someone wants to develop their programming ability and kind of get to the just the bottom of like how these things are developed, like if you find that stuff interesting, then you can code your own engine too. And it's like you don't have to build an actual engine, you can just build your game, which is what I'm doing right now. So it doesn't have to look like a lot of work also. Like you can just do the thing that you want to do and write the code for just that, and that's actually a really fun exercise also. So just use whatever tools you can, scope your projects so that you can pull them off, and rinse and repeat, just keep iterating.
And what kind of programming language do most people use? Do they usually use C++, or?
There's a big debate around this. It's I use C# because that's what I used in Unity, and I'm like comfortable with it, so I'm still using that. You can write your game in a managed kind of environment like C# or Java or whatever, or you could go, low level, like write it in C++. Again, this all depends on just the amount of complexity you want to deal with, what level you want to be at. You can still make your game. It doesn't really matter what it's built on. Just pick the thing that works for you. I would recommend that.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you put a ton of time into this, dude. It looks like it's a lot of fun to have a finished product, but it also, I imagine there was countless times where you were just like, oh my God, like you break something and then you're trying to figure out what it is. Like I've tried to get into programming recently, just playing around with like the visual novel makers and stuff like that, and trying to turn my comic into a visual novel. And just doing the very basics of programming, it's just like it can very easily be a pain in the ass.
It's really tedious, but I feel like, and I find it really tedious when I'm doing it for something that I don't really have my heart in, like when I was working a job or whatever, like it was excruciating, like horrible. But when that kind of stuff happens with the thing that I'm making, my God, man, that's a different guy in front of the computer. He's just like, I am just going to solve this problem, all right? And like I get a coffee, and I'm just like you just go into it, right? And you don't really stop and wonder like, oh my God, this is so tedious. You just do it, and I like being there. So that's why I have to work on the thing that calls out to me. Otherwise, I'm miserable. I'm miserable to myself and the whole world, and like I just don't want to go there.
Yeah, that is very true, man. Like if you're not doing the creative thing it is that you really want to do, and you're trying to chase money or you're trying to uh, get some sort of approval from people, it's just not going to
Mhm.
work. It's
Yep.
generally people produce their worst work whenever they're trying to appease some audience in their head. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. And I think, like, as a creative, like the exercise that you do on yourself to, let go of those hang-ups, which can be difficult. That they can be really subtle. You might not know, like, some unconscious part of you is trying to appease, someone, or has some, beliefs about how things should be, which aren't really true to your endeavors. I've worked through that, so I relate with this one for one. Like, I know when I was working on the thing and it was not coming from over there. So
Hmm.
now I'm more mindful of it. I'm just like, you're still doing the thing because it's coming from the heart. And I think that's when I'm doing my best work.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the most difficult thing for creatives is kind of getting past this brainwashing that we've been indoctrinated into by society, which is tells us that you have to choose between doing the thing you love and making money. Um,
Mm, mm,
and what I've discovered just from my own experiences is that if you're following like the path of the heart, the means it will show up somehow, some way. I mean,
yes.
you really can't like jump ahead and try to plan for 10 years down the road because life just doesn't work that way. But if you can make a
Mm,
step in the direction it is that you're supposed to go in,
mm.
um, then it really just becomes about doing that every day,
Oh yeah,
and somehow, some
yeah.
way, it'll show up.
For sure. And I think you have to experience that once to kind of get you learn your way into training that muscle to, to realize how, like, every step that you're taking, every action that you're performing, say like with the creative kind of, like, say if I'm making a game and I'm chasing after this feeling, and I add something to the game that feels a certain way, and if I can develop that intuition to see if it's going in that direction, that motion will grab you. Like, that's the oh my god, this person is so driven, or you're really focused or whatever. No, that's actually you're going into, like, a process is kind of consuming you. And I feel like the path of the heart is that, like, that you have to find that in your creative endeavor. And also I think that happens to you in life also, because, like, you want to be living, your most authentic version of yourself, to remain in that space creatively as well. Basically, Rick Rubin, the creative act, is
Hmm.
he does a pretty good job of explaining this. Yeah.
Yeah, I've read a little bit of Rick Rubin stuff, and it definitely connects directly with with my experience with the creative process. So much of it is just like it almost, yeah, I mean, it really doesn't have anything to do with the artists themselves. It has more to do
Hmm.
with opening up as a channel and
Yep.
allowing these things to
100%.
come through.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I
You're
kind
not
of
even
almost,
doing it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like there's basically like this ether where there's just all the ideas, and then just if you can tune into that frequency, then the idea that fits for you in that frequency will just kind of drop in your lap, and then you can go through
Yep.
the process of materializing it. I almost feel like
Hmm.
it's like it's like a door that you walk into. It's like if you have a hall of doors in front of you, and in each one of
Hmm.
those doors is a different experience. And if you step into that room, then everything it is that you need to have that experience, like the people, the places, the circumstances, the synchronicities, the
Hmm.
resources, all of it's kind of like in that room, and you just step into that room to experience it. You know what I mean? Because it is
Oh
like,
yeah.
if you go back to the analogy of a simulation, it's very much like, if you think about the game, if you think about life outside of the experience of it, it's if you could see the game dev console of life, it would probably be very
Yeah.
similar, right? Like
Hmm.
the whole thing is created. There's really no sense of like time. right? It's just kind of like this thing that's already done and it's completed. And then player comes in and they experience it sequentially, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
then,
a time linear versus block time universe. So like if you're connected to that place, you're literally like clairvoyant. So you're looking at 3D time already played out. I saw Matrix Reloaded yesterday, basically. Yeah, like when you develop
oh
the
yeah,
sight, right? Yeah, Dune I think also talks about that same concept. You kind of like you're just going out of time, and then you just see the whole thing play out, and you're like, all right, now I know what to do. That's I think once you're peaking in your creative abilities, that channel is open so wide that you become the medium through which that art manifests, and you're just like a servant to that higher power at that point, which is channeling through you.
yeah. Do you have like kind of strange synchronicities that happen in your day-to-day life that aren't really directly related to the game itself, but are just related to life, to where you kind of go like, oh man, it really is like some sort of a game?
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. Like I've been talking about this on my Instagram as well, because it's just it got to a point where I was just like, all right, you know what, this needs to be documented. I need to kind of like have conversations with versions of me that are going through time, and kind of get to the bottom of this whole synchronicity thing, because like it definitely is a thing, and you can conjure them. You can literally like train your mind body to maintain this kind of space where you are literally like matching between different occurrences that have beats, that have repetitions and iterations, and like you see yourself in this kind of spiral, which has a shape and a structure. So yeah, definitely happens to me. I actually wrote about this when I was done making Lovely Planet. I read that blog post now, and I was just like, all right, this guy was obviously firing from that same place where the game was just like coming to him. I was just like, I didn't even anticipate the problems that I was solving by making decisions, without knowing them. Like no conscious kind of effort. Like I was just like throwing stuff in. And I'm like, okay, this really felt different. And I was just like, once I was done with Lovely Planet, 22-year-old me was just like, yeah, this was a strange experience, man. So I feel like he was kind of like talking to me through time, so that when I was working on this game, which I'm doing right now, I'd be like, am I firing from that same place? Because that place is groovy, and I need to stay there. We need to stay there. My younger self is here, still in that space. I mean, I'm in the room. This is where I made Lovely Planet. So
Yeah.
Got to channel that.
So what do you mean that you said the other version of yourself is talking to you outside of time?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, that sounds very close to the way it is that I felt recently as well.
Yeah.
When I get into these
Cool.
meditative experiences where you kind of realize that like whatever it is that you call God or whatever that doesn't have a face, you realize how familiar it is to you. Like it is the most familiar thing. Right?
Yeah. How did you experience that familiarity? Like, what was the like? Do you see versions of yourself outside of time, or is it just an ever-present kind of sensation?
I haven't had that. It's just the sensation of there always being a presence there. And I guess when I was younger, I didn't notice it, or I wasn't into that frequency, and so I guess I assumed that I was always just like a loner, or like I was just alone in the universe in some way. And then you realize that the world actually responds to you, like you're talking about, certain synchronicities that you can conjure up. I'm curious what you mean by that. Like I've kind of figured out ways to do that. I feel like if I get into a good meditative state, I can just ask a question, and then I'll see it reflected in my environment in some way. The answer will, like if I just ask myself, like, there's a particular situation with this person or whatever circumstance, what am I not understanding about this? And then literally I'll feel like I'll run into people that will play out a scene for me between them that will illustrate something that I wasn't aware of before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can anticipate or predict positive outcomes given the data that you have. So That's, I think, in short what conjuring a synchronicity would look like. But you're basically like seeing the cards that are dealt, right? The stuff that has already happened, and also there you have agency to choose, differently about how you remember the past, right? So that's also something that we're selecting. And the way we do that selection and the way we kind of like put those together uh, updates the salience landscape which I'm in, which is like the choices that I can make right now in the present, which will illustrate or choose from multiple different futures. So it's a game of attention at that point, where it's like if you're not noticing the synchronicities, you're not paying attention, because like you're technically creating synchronicities all the time. Like that's the default state, but we slip back into not paying attention or not being able to pay attention because of a variety of reasons, and that's where we feel like the synchronicities are not happening. But it's just like,
Mhm.
no, this whole thing is a synchronicity. You just have to kind of
Mhm.
pay attention,
Mhm.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Especially now, I feel like there's so many things that are trying to compete for your attention, trying to
Yes.
steal it, because there's maybe it's not um, maybe it's not a conscious thing that people are doing, but there's definitely there's definitely something going on where people try to parasite off of your creative energy. Like I was talking about this in a recent video that I had, because I've had people reach out to me or mention that they're stuck with their creativity or they're not as creative as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is that all of your emotional energy is your creativity, right? So
Yes.
if you're spending your emotional energy reacting to the game, to
Mm.
the simulation, whether that's like the news or
Oh,
whatever it is, like they're basically
yes.
like parasiting off of that energy,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's why a news headline has it's like you can look at any news website regardless of what its leaning is, and you're going to
Mm.
find that they do their links in such a way that you're going to click on them, just like a
Of
YouTube
course.
video. Like you want the
Yeah.
thumbnail and you want the title to be intriguing enough for people to click on it. And what's the
Mm-hmm.
easiest way to do that? The easiest way to do that is to put fear into someone. Put fear, hate, anger, something along those lines, because it's like your mind and your heart immediately sync together. And as soon as it is that you do that, then you're basically you're compelled to move in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
And what I
It's a
think is,
cheap attention grab, basically. A very cheap, quick attention grab. Yeah.
yeah, hmm
Yeah.
yeah.
You were
And
saying?
what I think is interesting about that is like that same sort of synchronization between your heart and your mind. It has to be there for whenever you do something creative as well, right?
Mm. Mm.
But sometimes if we if we're so reactive to media that's trying to provoke fear or something along those lines,
Mm.
what I think is interesting is that your heart almost feels like it's being abused, and so
Mm.
it might not be as easy to step into your creativity because the heart is hesitant because you've put so much garbage in front of it. You know what I mean?
Mm. Mm-hmm. Totally. 100%. I relate with this so deeply. I have a personal beef with the news. Like I grew up in New Delhi, and this is like supposed to be a pretty politically charged place anyway. And I've always
Yeah,
been, I do not look at politics. It's like, for me, it's like cognitive security. I will not
yeah,
engage in, constructed narratives. It's like I am post narrative. I'm not uninformed.
yep,
But the thing is, like that, what you're saying, it is so effective, and it happens all the time. And it doesn't. We don't even have to point fingers at the news or whatever, the current events and this and that. This can be a self-inflicted thing as well, like if you're holding on to like past grudges or anything that's bothering you at an interpersonal level, or if you have a grudge towards the world. Here I think politics comes in for a lot of people, but like if you have some kind of hang up towards the universe at large, that thing will keep manifesting, and it will keep sucking up your energy, and you just won't be able to channel it into your creativity. And I think that's where, for personally for me, all the times that I have been blocked from, in that place where I'm not being able to come up with, the next thing that I want to work on, or I can't find that drive, it's because of that. So like what you're saying, I agree with 100%. Like the heart and the the heart and the mind, they're kind of like playing out this kind of tango almost, and they need to
Mhm.
balance each other out in a way. I think your mind has also got a lot to do with it. Like it's not just all heart. I think even in the creative pursuit, like you want to have your you want to be channeling between those two places. Like I think that's where the magic happens. And if there's any attractor, if there's any kind of attention grab or something that's kind of sucking your energy out of that process, it doesn't work for me at least. Like I try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, creativity is to live in the spirit, and to live in the spirit is basically to be here, but uh, you're not. You live in this world, but you're not from it.
Hmm.
And I think whenever it is that you do anything creative, you have a tangible experience of what it is that that actually means, because it
Hmm.
becomes clear to you that there's definitely something that is beyond this, a reality that's like that everything is manifesting out of and then kind of falls back into, you know.
Totally, totally. And I think as artists, like you must have seen this in the art that you produce. Like if you do it from that place, it stands out. It's people see that, it's not about the bling that you've put on the art piece or the game that you're making or all of those
Mhm.
things. Like whatever that thing is, if you channel from that place, it will reflect one for one in the thing that you put out on a Steam page or on a website or a web comic or whatever it is. Like people will be able to see that, and that will be like this abstract kind of you know felt experience around the art piece, which nobody will be able to point fingers at or be able to replicate, but just everyone will look at that and be like, yo, I
Yeah.
resonate with this, right? Yeah, yeah. I noticed that in other pieces, so I'm assuming that would work for me and my fellow artists. So I feel like that's we should all, because we feed off that same energy. It's not some parasitic
Mhm.
kind of narcissistic endeavor there. It's like you want to
Mhm.
have that thing because I think that thing is what inspired you, and what you will inspire in other people who will consume the art that you make. So we're just like, yeah, it's a giant pyramid scheme of awesome. And I'm like, yeah, sign me up. Let's make more cool stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what makes art so unique. It's interesting that like society's perspective on art, especially like if you're an artist or you're a creator, and you were growing up in a time before now, basically,
Hmm.
you were told that if you want to make games or you want to make comics or whatever, then you just be wasting your time. It's better to just be a doctor. But I mean,
Hmm.
really, when you consider that, it really tells you that art is like it's the most real thing, right? Because like if you're somebody like, I don't know, on I feel like we've seen so much of this on like these YouTube like uh, alpha male guys that are like that are going onto YouTube and giving all this advice, and then you come to find out they're just running scams and they're totally full of shit. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
there's nothing pure in it, and so it's just a matter of time before that house of cards just kind of falls down. But like you
Hmm.
said, whenever you create something that's creative, you're just channeling something, and then other people, they can sense it off of the work it is that you do. They can sense that it's very genuine and it's coming from that place. And and so whenever you're an artist and you're creating something like that, uh, it's an adventure. It's not about doing something in order to get money. It's not about doing something in order to get something. Like I had this experience with the comics that I'm making. So I've written some of my own stories, but I wanted to adapt these Philip K. Dick short stories, these public domain short stories, into comics, kind of as a way to teach myself. And I'm a fan of his stories because his stories are like, I have two of them on my Gumroad that people can get right now, and I'll send them to you. But they're basically like Twilight Zone episodes, right? So like the first one is called The Hanged Man, and it's basically about this guy who's on his way to work, and he drives past a town square, and he looks out his window and he sees a dead body hanging in the town square, but everybody's walking past it like it's not there. And he gets out of the car and he runs up and he's like, what the fuck? Like, what is this? And everybody's like, hey, chill out, man. If it wasn't meant to be there, then it wouldn't be there. This kind of attitude. And he starts to question his sanity. Like, is he seeing something that other people aren't seeing, or what's going on here? And, as I started to make that comic book, I'm living in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and, I would take a break from I would take a break from working on it, and I would just go on a walk. And I would just get to like at the end of a street, and I would just say, okay, turn left or turn right. And I would just follow my intuition, like whatever my gut said, And I'll never forget, man, I walked down to this little store where actually it was like one of those donation places for like the Soy Dog Foundation or something like that. And they had a box of books and box of DVDs. And I just walked up and I put my hand in there, and I picked up the first thing, and it was Minority Report, which was one of the films that's adapted from his short stories.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, nice. and I've found myself like surrounded by his books at like bookstores, just random bookstores, different things like that. The craziest one though is that, okay, so the original story is called The Hanging Stranger, but I changed it to The Hanged Man, because I started to get into the tarot just this last year. After I'd already drawn the comic, I had started to get into the tarot, and I was looking at the symbolism and writing about it. And I realized that the 12th card in the tarot was the Hanged Man. And the hanged, and so I was like, okay, so I have to redo the cover to make it look like the tarot card, because the symbolism of the Hanged Man is basically somebody who is having a disorientation from spiritual insight or spiritual enlightenment, right? Like you have this kind of awakening, and there's like a disorientation.
Dark night of the soul.
Dark night of the soul, a new beginning, but it's also like where am I standing on this? You know what I mean? And I felt like that was completely like when I first started making the book, I didn't know why I was drawing it. And then by the time I got to the tarot card and I was writing about my experience, I was like, it was 100% the way that I felt leaving America. I felt like I was seeing a dead body hanging in a public square, and everybody was just pretending like it was perfectly fine. So I felt like it was so relevant in that sense. And then also the tarot connection. So it's like the more it seems to gather layers, more and more layers to it as you go through this process of creating something.
For sure, very much relate with that, especially with the game I'm working on right now, Tamashika. Like I spent I did the exercise of like, following my intuition, going with my gut, like just throwing everything in there that I find is cool. And after all of those things were up there, and I just trusted my gut. And I even if like my mind was telling me that, hey, this might not work, or this is not what players want, or won't it, this, that, like I ignored all of that, and I was just like, all right, just put the stuff that you think is cool in there. And I feel like after a while, what happens is that thing just it becomes sentient. Like now it starts talking back to you. It's just like, have you tried this, or have you tried that? It's like I look at it. It's like this daily ritual. Like I'm not working on my game. I'm sitting with this other organism that's kind of like winking at me, and it's like telling me like, you know what you're doing. Like, why don't you continue doing that? And I'm like, yeah, actually, you're right, because this is pretty cool. Like maybe I'll change this, and it'll be more interesting or more fun, or and then slowly, I think as other people start playing it as well, then it's like this collaborative exercise, that's just. I just want to stay there all the time. I just want to be with my art. I just want to be with the thing that I want to create, and I feel like it's just kind of romantic.
So you said you feel like it's another organism that is like winking at you, another intelligence that you're interacting with whenever it is that you're making the system itself. Is that what you mean?
Very much so. I it's actually like a reflection of me in a certain way, as is like the whole simulation. But the fact that there's this one thing that I'm working on, which is full of my inspirations, right? Once I think in a more practical sense, if you don't want to call it an organism or whatever, the fact that it has all of those things inside it, it becomes like this exploration. It becomes like this exercise that I'm doing on myself, where can I see that thing more clearly? And obviously, because I'm putting all those hours into it, there's obviously some drive there. So that's just another way of saying that the idea is sentient. The idea is agentic, right? And it has kind of come into becoming this complex system between me and the project, through which inspiration is flowing, and they are kind of like constructing each other. I'm becoming the more authentic version of myself, and my project is taking shape to kind of reflect that. I know it's romantic or whatever, it's kind of like an exaggerated way to put it, but I feel like that's where all of the high achieving kind of, the people who did it, I think that's where they were doing it from. And I guess I can prove that by doing it, by repeating the process and narrating it as I'm doing it. So wish me luck.
So what is Tomish? How do you say it?
Tamashika. Yeah, Tamashika.
What does that mean?
Yeah. So I like that because tamashi in Japanese means soul, and to put the ka in front of it would be like blossoming, like a blossoming soul.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and tamashi in Hindi actually has a meaning as well. It's like drama, the word drama, like you're creating drama. So and I needed the game to allude to a female character that is somewhere, because that's the lore of the game. That's the backdrop. So I was just like, yeah, this name is perfect. I am not going to rethink this. And I went to a friend I knew from through Twitter. Can you just draw up, this with the sun and the moon? And we also had the whole tarot inspiration to some extent. Just wanted that kind of occult imagery there. Yeah, I think it works.
How did the tarot work into it? Do you draw tarot cards to make any kind of like creative decisions or anything like that?
No, not at all. Just from an aesthetic standpoint. Like I love the tarot aesthetic. And I don't know the name of that image. It's on like there's this like really iconic image of like a person kind of like peering through reality, and like there's like the sun and the stars and the moon and everything. I found that image like really called out to me. I was just like, can I just conveniently pick this up and put it into my game? So that's what I did.
That's cool, man. Yeah, man, cool. We're closing in on here in an hour. I know you want to get back to working on your game and whatnot. So I'm gonna include a link to your Steam page and whatnot down below. Is that the best way to check out your stuff? Is through Steam? Wishlist your game.
Yeah, that would be great. Please wishlist the game. Let the algorithm know that this is worth people's attention. That would be nice.
And if people want to follow you on social media, is the Twitter, is that the best one?
Yeah. Yes, I am mainly posting on X. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Oh wow, dude, you've got like more stuff posted on your page as well.
There's lots of videos there. Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig through some of this stuff. Cool, man. Well, thank you for chatting with me.
Thanks for having
anybody
me,
wants. Yeah. This is fun. We know a couple of people. We have a couple of mutual friends. So yeah.
I'm glad we got connected, and love this conversation. So thanks.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for those watching. Like I said, if you want to check out his Steam page and get any of his games, I'll include that link down below, as well as his Twitter. And if you want to check out my comics, I've got a link to my Gumroad down there as well, with some free samples. And thanks, guys, for watching. Take care.
Thank you.